JWL Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the world. If this is your first time checking out a video, please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. We're watching a clip of The Herd with Colin Cowherd, talking about Caleb Williams. Apparently, Ryan Leaf is coming out saying, teams should be careful about drafting Caleb Williams. And honestly, the only real people that I see who are trying to give hesitation for drafting Caleb are people who are big Justin Fields fans, and they don't want Justin Fields to leave, or they're Chicago fans and they don't want Justin Fields to leave, and so they're saying, oh, Caleb's not that good, he's going to be like a Bryce Young, yada yada yada. And so outside of those specific circumstances, I don't see anyone really questioning Caleb Williams. And someone in the comments the other day said, like, he's blown away by this because he thinks, like, is this just this big massive group think where because he's like, Caleb Williams is massively overrated, yet everyone is saying he's amazing, and he thinks that it's just like almost kind of like a virus that has just infected media everywhere, so everyone's just kind of saying it even though it may not actually be true. I find that pretty shocking, honestly, that everyone collectively just has Caleb Williams wrong. So I'm really curious to see what Colin has to say with this. He's a huge Caleb Williams fan. He's been banging on a drum and, referring to it as the Caleb Williams sweepstakes since before last season even started, before the college season even started. So I know he's high on him, but I'm curious to see, what exactly he has to say, and then we can break it down from there.
When McCole Hardman came out for the Jets and said, I've been with the Chiefs now, I've been to Super Bowls like 4 times, I know what winning looks like, and it's not what the Jets are doing in that building, people push back. Who's McCole Hardman? You don't have to be a great player to have great access. Ryan Leaf knows quarterback play. He failed in the NFL. So what? Johnny Manziel failed. Sometimes, my wife has a saying as a parent, be a great example or a horrible warning. Kids learn from both. And you're listening to this as somebody that's older thinking, yeah, don't do what the parents did. Nobody's perfect. No parents are perfect. Be a great example or horrible warning. Ryan Leaf knows quarterback play. He was on Dan Patrick's show earlier this week, and he talked to here about Caleb Williams, and this is increasingly, as people now break down every play of Caleb Williams, I think this is a very fair criticism.
If they take him, I would be, you better be under the understanding that you're going to sit him this year. Because 75% of what he made him so great in college is not transferable to the NFL. He's not going to be able to do that. He can't do what he did in college 75% of the time and be successful at the NFL level. He can do the 25% part at the NFL level, but he needs some time.
And I think that's fair that Caleb often leans into the spectacular. Mahomes does too. About 3 to 4 times a game early in his career, and now maybe twice. One of the things, the areas of growth for Mahomes, and it's really, and I think I've seen every big Mahomes snap. Early in his career, he would get into the weeds. His mechanics would flail, and he would try to be sometimes too spectacular. He had Tyreek Hill, I get it. Over the last 2 years, the genius of Mahomes, you still get occasionally the great play, but he doesn't lean into it. He takes what the defense gives him. I said this on Michael Jordan. Michael, twice a game, maybe 3 times a game in the playoffs, would do something you'd never seen. Michael lived off the mid-range jumper, and he would just abuse you over and over and over again. Caleb Williams, about 12 times a game at USC, maybe 15, is just making it go. This is not flag football. You're going to find out very quickly the defensive end for Cleveland or the Vikings or the Lions can outrun you. Johnny Manziel found out in preseason. He gave the bird to a member of Washington. He was frustrated. They were catcalling him. But in the end, you can't run around like this. You can do it against Arizona. You can do it against Washington State. You can do it against Colorado. You can't do it against the worst NFL defensive front. So I think top of next hour, 35 minutes from now, I'm going to take the quarterbacks and the first round.
Okay, so I understand what Colin is saying, and I understand what Ryan Leaf is saying, but it's kind of ridiculous at the same time. Because, first off, 75% is just a gross, exaggerated number. I don't even know where he's coming up with that, quite honestly. And you're not going to tell me that he's just looked at all the snaps and documented each snap that he said, okay, this play won't work, and so 75% of the things he's done, that's just asinine, okay? the problem that you have with the Caleb Williams is this, the way how I see it, is that since he is such a magical player, right? Such a wow player and does these big, crazy things that they're now saying isn't going to work in the NFL, which I agree, it's not going to work at that volume, right? I'll be able to run around playing with a bunch of 10-year-old kids all day, right? I can't do the same thing with a bunch of, 25-year-old men. It's obviously different. And that's kind of what, in a way, what they're saying. But to say that Caleb Williams isn't special, that he won't be able to do some of these things when it calls for it, when the play breaks down, when he needs to extend the play and escape the pocket and buy some time and do certain things that we see that Patrick Mahomes does, we have no reason to believe that Caleb Williams won't be able to translate that to the NFL. The problem is that relying on it too much and trying to do things magically too frequently. And that is why you need a good head coach. I actually really believe this now, the more I think about it. Patrick Mahomes was always going to be a pretty good quarterback. He was going to always be a great quarterback. But it's because of what Andy Reid, when he says the genius of Patrick Mahomes, of how now he only does this like 1-2 times a game. No, that's the genius of Andy Reid. When Patrick Mahomes early in his career started to deviate, started to get sloppy, started to rely too much on these things, and his mechanics would slip, he didn't correct it himself. He didn't just look in the mirror and say, I got to get better. It was Andy Reid who was like, come back, child, come back. I got you. We got to focus here. I know you can do all this amazing stuff, but we got to focus here, okay? We're not playing NFL Blitz on, Nintendo 64 here. We got to be smart here. And that is the biggest risk with the Caleb Williams. Because these types of athletes, they're so superior. They're just next level superior that they need a coach to contain and mold them. Otherwise, things can get out of control. I mean, they just can. To use my example, again, this is going to be a very silly example, and hopefully you could just follow. Again, it's like being a grown man playing with a bunch of 10-year-old kids, right? If you're not coached properly and you don't understand the circumstance, you're just going to barrel through and literally injure little 10-year-olds, right? You have to understand everything around you. You have to understand the circumstances of what you can and can't do. Same thing now, use that same person who's now able to just like literally just deck 10-year-olds. If you're now playing with a bunch of 25-year-olds and you think in your mind, oh, these are still a bunch of 10-year-olds, I can go deck them still, you get crushed, right? The next moment you step up and you say, oh, this guy, I always can, run past the lineman, and then boom, you just get drilled. That's what happened to Baker Mayfield's shoulder. He thought that he could take down, someone on defense, and it's like, you're not that big, you're not that strong, you're not that fast. And this is what you see with Josh Allen. Josh Allen is an absolute freak, athletically, and skillfully. The difference is that he's so big and strong that he's able to kind of continue to rely on that aspect of his game, which I think will ultimately shorten his career, unfortunately. And he hasn't had a coach to say, yo, we need to contain this a little bit. That's what I see. A lot of people compare Patrick Mahomes, Caleb Williams to Patrick Mahomes, but I could see the potential of it being Josh Allen. I think Patrick Mahomes would be a Josh Allen if it wasn't for Andy Reid. Andy Reid is the genius that really connected all of this for everyone. He really did. And again, if Josh Allen played for Andy Reid, he would be a completely different quarterback. He would. You wouldn't be relying on Josh Allen to doing all this crazy magical stuff 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a game. But he does. He has a defensive head coach. He has a revolving door of, OCs, and that's what happens. So Caleb Williams, his success is going to be predicated on who his coaches are. And then once he gets developed and once he understands what's up, then, you have a little bit more wiggle room. Just kind of like how Patrick Mahomes now went to another coach, he would have more wiggle room to understand, okay, I know what it takes to win. But when you're a freak, like a Patrick Mahomes, like a Josh Allen, like a Caleb Williams, you actually don't have a deep understanding of what it takes to win, especially in the NFL. Maybe at different levels you do, but Patrick Mahomes, needed to be taught how to win in the NFL, what it takes. Patrick Mahomes needed to learn, okay, you know what? Throwing for, a million yards and a million touchdowns is great, but that's not necessarily what it takes. I need to play smart, situational football. Just because I can always push the ball downfield doesn't mean I need to always look for that play down the field. And that's the thing that Josh Allen has not been able to do so far, of, just realizing, okay, take the check down, do some of these things. And so Caleb Williams, to me, is such a freak and so amazing that he's been able to rely on that throughout his entire career. And so you really do. You just start to believe, like, I will be able to do this no matter what level, because you've never actually been shown otherwise. And we see this with a lot of young players who are really great in any sport, honestly. And I mean, the best example of this is actually pop stars. Seriously, people who are child actors, they get so famous and they're so successful so young. Like, let's say use a Justin Bieber as an example. The dude is literally being told he's like the most attractive boy, because that's what he is, 14 years old or whatever, 14, 15 years old. He's being worshipped, okay? Having literally millions of people saying, oh my God, Justin, you are amazing, I want you. You believe that you are just unstoppable. You truly believe you are a god, because how can you not? How can you wake up in the morning and be 14 years old, look out the window and realize, oh my God, the literal world worships me? And that's what happens with some of these athletes who are so athletically gifted, like a Caleb Williams. And so that is an issue. We saw this kind of with a Carson Wentz. He could not be contained. He would not take the check down. He would not lay his body on the line and be smart from an injury prevention. You just could not coach that out of him for whatever reason. Seems like Caleb Williams has a much better head on his shoulders, where I can't imagine that being the case. But this is the biggest risk of being drafted by Chicago. It just is that you just have no idea. Now, the fact that apparently it's kind of like, there seems to be back and forth reports with Caleb about whether or not he wants to go to Chicago, whether or not he doesn't. It feels like, since that he's even having a question mark around it, makes me feel that he understands how important the situation is, and the coach. Like, Joe Burrow is so cocky. He goes, I don't care where I go. I'll go to Cincinnati, whatever. I'll bring us to greatness. Like, he has an intense amount of cockiness, which I think could be a downfall for him, quite honestly. He's able to get away with it for now, but, who knows where his career takes him. Patrick Mahomes was humbled from the beginning, especially because he sat for a year. And so I think sitting for a year wouldn't be the worst thing for Caleb Williams. But those things only work when your organization is legit, when you have the coaches down, when you have the OC down. People always talk about Patrick Mahomes sitting. They want to use that as now the new frame of reference of what you do, because if it works for Patrick Mahomes, then it should work for anyone. And it's like, no. Patrick Mahomes got to be behind Alex Smith, an absolute upstanding, great, awesome, seasoned veteran who understood where he was at in his career. And you have Andy Reid. You had the stability of the Kansas City Chiefs. You had all those things. So Patrick Mahomes could just go into this and say, okay, I can just sit. I'm going to step up. Because even just training physically, like working out, lift weights and stuff and all that type of stuff is different in college than in pros. You're going to have access to higher quality resources, and your body is still maturing and growing. The way these guys are, they're literally still going through puberty. So I am a huge fan of sitting people just from the fact of letting themselves get acquainted with being an actual professional. So you're not kind of doing catch up. So you don't have to step out on the field while also learning how to be a pro. Patrick Mahomes was able to learn how to be a pro, no pressure, no stress, and just got to learn and take everything in. Got to continue maturing his body, got to, eat better, work out better, do the drills, do everything, learn from Andy Reid, all that type of stuff. You're not going to get that if you sit Caleb Williams with the Chicago Bears. It's just not happening in that way. So this idea that you're just going to be able to sit, just not true. So that's the way I see it. Caleb Williams, I think, is a tremendous talent and will absolutely be wildly successful in the NFL, but he needs to be built. He needs to be sculpted, not unlike Patrick Mahomes, not unlike Tom Brady. all the greats needed to be sculpted. They were all just hunks of clay. Seriously. No one ever just really stepped up and just said, I am great, I am elite, I need nothing, let's go. Sometimes you see it with athleticism. You see it with like a Lamar Jackson who's just like, oh my God, this guy shot out of a cannon. But it's not good enough. You can have an electric year, but it's not good enough ultimately. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. Please let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so if you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, please let me know. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then definitely please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're all really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, where it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.